situation when the sun is going away from the northern north of the equator, goes to the south of the equator during the winter time, and goes at its lowest apogee in the sky, its lowest point in the horizon, and then it sort of dies under the Southern Cross constellation, and then it stays there. It goes down and then stays there for 3 days at winter solstice. It goes at the lowest point and stays for 3 days, meaning rising at the same point. And then on the 24th, it starts rising again. Yeah, that's why dying on a cross, and then 3 days in a tomb, and then starts rising again. Yeah. And then where it's gonna rise, on indicating new year, new solar year, as the sun starts to come back. That point is pointed out by the the three wise men, 3 stars of the Orion belt. That point to the bright star in the east, which is Sirius. So creating like this straight line. And if you look at the midnight, the day before, you'll see where that line is indicating, pointing at the horizon. And at that point, that's where the sun's going to rise the next day. So that's why you have that 3 wise men carrying gifts of myrrh, gold, and frankincense. And then the following is bright star in the east, and then finding place where baby Jesus is born in a manger. And of course, Jesus represents the sun. He is modeled after as a solar deity. We're talking about exoteric Christianity, which is sort of a celestial story of how the sun traverses the sky throughout the year. And then, of course, there's esoteric Christianity, which is your inner Christ, your inner sort of kingdom of heaven within, and all that jive, and like forgiveness through repentance and so on, which is radically different from Pauline Christianity, which is Catholic, sort of Roman imperial religion. It's just a whole different story. And of course, manger is where the animals are, is the metaphor for the zodiac. That's why I have all these animals in the manger, because most of the zodiac is all like animals. And that's also a reference to the Ark of Noah, for that matter. You have 2 pairs of animals, which is indicating kind of how you see the zodiac wheel from the northern hemisphere, or the north of the equator, because it's not a sphere, it's flat plane. For those who don't know yet, there's this flat and stationary. And from the southern perspective, south of the equator, how you see the zodiac belt. So hence you have 2 pairs per animal, with 2 sort of perspectives. But we're not going to go into that territory yet. As far as the sort of my assessment of overall state of humanity at this point, well, it's poor. I think it's humanity's in dire state. It's been taken over by evil doers, very sort of degenerate elites who have lost their own connection with the higher self and spiritual source, and they want that be severed for everyone else. They want to sabotage that connection with everyone who still have it, and that's done through a lot of like bad food, bad habits, bad environment, a lot of propaganda, a lot of lies and deception, and sort of turning spirituality into religion, which is binding minds, and brainwashing, vaccinations, of course, fluoride in water, which calcifies pineal gland, and all sorts of like pollution from chem sprays to various like 5G and whatnot. So now is the days of AI and sort of autonomous robots, and you have this neural networks that simulate sort of organic brain functions and so on. So there's a lot of sort of development where humanity finds itself firmly embedded in the matrix that's been created. It's been created for a long time, but it really had several stages that were significant in their impact. So there was the kind of a Nimrodian period, sort of Babylonian ideology, and Hammurabi Code of Laws and development of laws, and then the laws of Moses, and then sort of developing of the Plato's Republic, and you have Pythagorean sort of 500 BC movement of like the based on ancient Kemetic sort of traditions where it started to separate the common knowledge of the science with the esoteric knowledge of the secret societies, hidden knowledge, which is like magia or magic, or only magician knows the secret to the trick, kind of thing. Because magia in Persian means knowledge too. It's just one knowledge is shared. That's scientia, knowledge which is demonstrating something to others through scientific method, and others can see the recipe of how you derive this outcome, and then they can repeat it, and that hence it's science because it's confirmed by others. And magia, it's a inner knowledge, personal knowledge, secret knowledge, hidden knowledge. So you get with the Pythagoreans that start to diverge into this sort of binary system. And then, of course, you had the period of Akhenaten, who kind of inspired the character of Moses in the Bible with his Atenist ideology of like worshipping the power behind the sun, which manifested in power of the king. Because before, everybody there were like different centers, everybody could worship whatever they wanted, and there was like Heliopolis like own worship of sun god, Ra, yeah. And then in Thebes they had the worship of Amun or Iman, This means hidden. Eventually, they had also the Thoth, Hermopolis, and whatever centers were like worshipping of lunar god of wisdom, Thoth, as his Hermetic traditions comes from that, and so. So the Imun represented by the feather, like crown of feather, the feather of Maat, yeah, the goddess of truth. So his crown was the two feathers, was like rounded at the top, and that became the Ten Commandments, the two tablets, the feathers of the crown of Amun, which represents the goddess Maat of truth. Because before there was like in Egypt they had like 42 negative confessions. Well, number differs, but generally accepted like 42 in the Book of the Dead. I think there's more, but it's narrowed down to 42 negative confessions when Egyptians would recite from the first person, like, I did not steal, I did not kill, I did not bear false witness, and so on, I didn't blaspheme or whatever. So they had like all this statements, and one had to pronounce from the first person, indicating their conscious awareness of their actions and the responsibility that comes with it. And then the whole point of that Atenist philology that developed with Akhenaten is the sort of separate individual people's connection with the divine, that everybody could access hidden god Amun, who was known as a patron of sort of the poor people, because everybody could pray to supreme god Amun and ask for deliverance and favors and whatever. And of course, the feather represents the air. You have the general understanding that through the breath, the Holy Spirit, it's the one that comes in and animates and makes us conscious. And so we become aware when we breathe. And those traditions have even deeper roots in the Mesoamerican, sort of Native American system of the Great Spirit, where the breath, that everybody has the breath, and the breath was considered to be sort of a sacred sort of element that makes us alive. And breathing in, Ha, that's the Divine Mother of Peace. Well, attribution of peace and other adjectives. That's kind of my contribution to already sort of developed system. So it's the Ha, breathing in, and Wa, that's the breath out. That's the truth, because you speak truth. It comes out of inside. Breath out. That's the Father, and that's the center from which that truth comes out, and center from which the truth is experienced and witnessed and known. So and the peace is the circumference. So the universe has its center everywhere, its circumference nowhere. So it's all that like circumference, center, and radius, kind of three factors defining the whole one unified being, which comprises of the external, like the macrocosm, and microcosm internal, yeah. So inside and outside, and where we are the center and the circumference of it. Yeah. And radius, that's the relationship between center and circumference. That's the breath that animates breathing in and out, breathing out. That's the Ya, as the last letter in the Russian alphabet, means I am, I. the first cause, Yah, meaning who is breathing? Yah, I'm the one who is breathing. So, and Yahweh, hence you have Hawa, breathing in and out, and Yahweh is the one who is breathing. So, from here you got like Yahweh, Yahu, which is Egyptian for light, and because that creates kind of primordial capacitor, which creates a sort of electromagnetic field, and flow of the moving magnetic field creates electricity, and it creates electric potential and discharge, creating light and like sound and light and so on. So that's the kind of the idea of that, and everybody is connected to that breath through the breath with great god Iman, you know, who's represented by the feather, and the feather in Hebrew is Iber, you know, hence you have Hebrew. Hebrews, original Hebrews, they were like feathered people, meaning Native American, native, what do you call Indians, got feathers and still do. Why? Because Eagle constellation is over the Americas. That's the constellation of the American continent. That's why eagle is everywhere as a symbol of Americas, like Mexican flag and US and so on. But of course, it's a symbol of the Roman Empire and Reich and whatnot, and Byzantium and whatever, which is continuation of the same. But mainly to do is because a lot of those ancient seafaring people, so-called Phoenicians, they came through the prevailing currents which come from the Americas and go into across the Atlantic towards Europe, where it brings them to the Irish coast and then down through the Iberian Peninsula, again Iberian, Iber, yeah, feathered people. So they would call all these places after themselves. You know. From there became cults, and cults became known as the Sumerians. Like Sumerians didn't call themselves Sumerians; they called themselves cults, Kuldis. And they all came from there. That's why I had Sumerian like eagle people, with the wings carrying basket and corn. They have corn and a basket in there. Basket with seeds of corn. Yeah, that's meaning Native Americans came to West Asia and they brought with them agriculture and corn, and they have like timepieces. They invented time. That's why we have all this 60 base time. Say it's all Mayan based sort of time measuring system, and they're a symbol for their top god. There was the kind of three kind of three-prong like the symbol, you know? That was their, and that's what you find on the old Russian churches before they introduced Christianity in there, which in the 17th century was a Nikon's reform. That was a major push for final Christianization of Russia. Because before, say 1,000 years of Russian Christianity, there was actually only nobility who were practicing sort of Byzantium style or whatever form of Christianity. The common people were still practicing sort of their own traditions that were actually remnants or reverberations of this old cultures that came all the way from Americas long time ago. Yeah. And then some of them went to India. That's why you have step pyramids in India, temples. Yeah, they look all like Mayan, like, step pyramids, because they came there and they brought with them all that sort of Indo-Aryan culture. and became known as Indo-Aryan. Aryan means noble, so all this nobility came from ancient Americas, and they settled some of them in Northern Europe and then Middle East, or we call it West Asia, and then some went to India, Indus Valley, and so and some went to China. So the Mayan hieroglyphics, they're the visual part of them became the hieroglyphic languages, like Egyptian hieroglyphics or like Chinese scripts, and the and then the phonetic part of those symbols became the phonetical languages, like Phoenicians, hence phonetic, Phoenician, because each hieroglyphic at the center had like a sound, like they would depict the paw of a leopard, and there would be letter P, P, yeah. So that became separated from the original root of those languages. When the Bible goes, there was like one common language, and then it got separated. So some became Sanskrit, some became Egyptian hieroglyphs, some became Paleo-Hebrew. So the Paleo-Hebrew became the phonetic part. They simplified those characters and just kept the phonetic value of them and created sort of basic writing script, because they're merchants, they're traders, and so they needed something simple they can write, and that became Paleo-Hebrew, or Iber. So, Iber, as we already discussed, it's a feather in Hebrew, reference to the ancient American natives. And in that biblical genealogy, you have, Noah was supposedly albino. And then he had 3 sons. One is Japheth, one Ham, and Shem. And then so the Shemites, that's Shem, so that's the copper-colored Native Americans, and the sort of black people, red, brown, black people of the Indus Valley and all that territory. That's sort of like Shemites, and then Hamites became the African and sort of darker melanated people, and then Japhites, they retained that albino quality of their father and became white tribes. And hence Ashkenaz is actually son of there's Noah and Japheth, and then Gomer, and then Gomer has son Ashkenaz. And Ashkenaz, of course, it's a Japhetic line. And then the plains of Ashkenaz, that's around Armenia. That's where they were originally settled, in Armenian highlands, like Ashkenazi plains. And from there they moved down south. They became so-called Khazars. And then the Khazars adopted Judaism, like, I don't remember, around 9th century, something like that. Was it 9th or 7th century? I don't remember. I think it's 9th century. And anyway, so, and then Shemites, from Shem, hence you have Shemites, Semites. The Semitic is reference to a language group, obviously. So it's like Arabic and Hebrew, and like Aramaic and whatnot. It's part of the Semitic language group. And so you have the Shemites. So they're melanated, sort of copper-colored people who are the Native Americans, the Shemites. So the Shem had son, Arphaxad, and then he had a son. What is that? Anyway, what is that? It skips my mind now. Let's see if I can find it. Side. I don't remember. I'm gonna pause it.